The US-led coalition has conducted what they describe as defensive airstrikes against pro-government forces in the country. Well, for more on this, let's cross live now to RT's Caleb Maupin in New York. Hi there, Caleb. Could you bring us up to date?
Yes, we have confirmation from U.S. Central Command that airstrikes have been conducted by U.S. forces against forces aligned with the Syrian government. Now, the U.S. Central Command is describing these airstrikes as defensive, saying that the forces they struck first attacked the SDF. Now, the SDF are Kurdish forces that are being supported by the United States. Now, it's important to take into the context that these airstrikes are taking place just after we heard on January 17th from Rex Tillerson. Now, Rex Tillerson said that the forces of the United States are only in Syria for the purpose of defeating the remnants of the ISIS terrorists, and furthermore, that they are there to make sure they don't return. However, in the past, we've heard Rex Tillerson characterize the purpose of U.S. forces in Syria, both ground troops and air forces patrolling the east of the country, as being there to help replace the Syrian president, Bashar Assad. This is statements we've heard from U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson.
The United States will maintain a military presence in Syria focused on ensuring ISIS cannot reemerge. Total withdrawal of American personnel at this time would restore Assad and continue his brutal treatment against his own people.
So there's a little bit of a mixed message there. He's saying that forces are in Syria to defeat the terrorists, but then that withdrawing them would somehow restore the Syrian president, Bashar Assad, and help the internationally recognized Syrian government. It's rather unclear. At this point, there are roughly 2,000 U.S. troops in Syria, and in addition to that, the U.S. Air Force is patrolling the eastern part of the country. U.S. Air Forces are patrolling the eastern parts of the country, and it's rather unclear about why they're there. Now, we have had a reaction from the Russian president, Sergei Lavrov, about U.S. forces and their recent activities. This is Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister of Russia.
The lack of a fundamental commitment to our agreements is typical of current U.S. diplomacy, including the reasons why the Americans stay in Syria. Rex Tillerson repeatedly stated that their only goal in Syria was the defeat of ISIL. Now they've got far more ambitious plans.
Now, at this point, it's in question. Why are the U.S. forces in Syria? Now, it's important to note that they're in Syria without the permission of the internationally recognized government. The internationally recognized government has not granted the United States the right to send its forces into the country, making this essentially an invasion under international law. Now, at this point, as it's unclear if these forces are there to fight against terrorists or fight against the internationally recognized government, that question is becoming even more vital as we see U.S. forces have now conducted airstrikes against the Syrian government.
That's Caleb Maupin in New York. Thank you very much. Well, retired U.S. Army General Paul Vallely gave us his views on the airstrike in Syria.
I think there's always been the motive to see Assad removed and a new government, a new leader put in Syria. I know that's been one of the motivations of the United States. And then, of course, you have Russia on the other side supporting Assad. Again, the United States and Russia can solve this problem if they can sit down and work something out with all Syrian elements, all organizations. It can't just be pro-regime. They've got to look at some of the remnants of the better parts of the Free Syrian Army. They have to look at the Kurds that are in northern and eastern Syria. And until that can be brought together and resolved, we're going to see a continuation of these conflicts.